Where will Isaac Wilson land on the QB depth chart in 2025? And as we get ready to get our first look at the Utah football team, means we're also going to get our first look at Devin Dampier, who will be this year's backup quarterback. We're discussing all things quarterback related as we're just 2 days away from Utah football spring ball getting underway. We're talking about on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. If it's your first time listening to the show, make sure you like and subscribe. Also, today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment? It's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. My name is JT Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Excited to be joined on today's show by Alex Napoles, a host of the Saturday Show, and does all things, basically comments, produces at KSL Sports Rewind. Alex, all the shine is on Devin Dampier. We'll get to him, some of the other quarterbacks that Utah had in the transfer room, as well as one who's coming in the recruiting ranks as we continue our position previews on spring ball. But one name that hasn't been mentioned a lot is one of the most polarizing names on Utah's roster, Isaac Wilson, the four-star quarterback, a top 25 QB when he committed in the class of 24. That was a massive get for this Utah team. We were all excited to see him eventually. He emerged as the leader for the backup job last year. So we're like, okay, beat out Brandon Rose. We're expecting big things eventually, but we're not going to have to see him. Cam Rising gets hurt. He has to play. It doesn't go well at all. He actually hits the portal, but he decides to come back. And now he's this weird enigma on Utah's roster. So where will he land on the QB depth chart? Right now, I'm thinking 3 or 4, just based on what we saw last year. But guys often make a jump from freshman to sophomore year. So I am curious to see what Isaac Wilson looks like now that he had a massive learning experience under his belt.
Absolutely. I think, having to be thrust into a starting position the way that he was his freshman year, I do think that, one, it did not go according to plan, but that's okay. He was a true freshman. That's something that you should probably expect to happen for a true freshman. Mm-hmm. But the experience that he gained during that time, I'm sure will be incredibly valuable for his further development. However, coming into this 2025 season with a brand new revamped quarterback room, right? No more Brandon Rose, no more Sam Heward. Devin Dampier comes in, Brandon Zurbrugg comes in, Nate Johnson comes in. There's a couple of freshmen coming in as well as the biggest thing, a new offensive coordinator. For me, and what I believe, I think Isaac Wilson should be probably QB3, maybe QB4, with the potential to just redshirt the year entirely. I think a redshirt year for Isaac Wilson will be immensely valuable, and that's, of course, pending on what happens down the road with, all the talks of maybe a 5th year of eligibility and whatever happens in the NCAA landscape down the line. But still, I think just an extra time to really learn, not only under a new system, but obviously under new offensive coordinator Jason Beck. I think that would be huge for Isaac Wilson and his development.
I think it could be as well. And it is interesting looking back. We all just remember the bat of Isaac Wilson, and it wasn't great last year, but I was looking at the Utah Athletics website, and they posted some of the accolades. Wilson last year did become the first true freshman in program history to beat an AP ranked team when Utah won on the road, beat Oklahoma State. Bad Cowboys team in the end, yes, but still was a tough road win at the time. He also became the first freshman QB in school to surpass 200 yards through the air in 3 straight games. And this is just a guy who he's one of only 2 freshmen to throw for over 200 yards in his first 2 starts at Utah. He's accomplished a lot of things while he was here too. And I know it wasn't always great, 1,500 plus yards, 10 touchdowns to over 10 interceptions as well. But this is a guy who had potential and he wasn't ready. But we see a lot of players who they're not ready on the field their freshman year, so we don't see them. I look back on if Utah had thrust out Caleb Lomu his freshman year, I don't know how he would have looked. But he has that year of redshirt, come in, develop, and he was really good at left tackle for Utah. So I'm just not ready to give up on Wilson yet and just say he's never going to see the field at Utah. I still think he could be a guy. Maybe the best thing is for him to redshirt, Alex, but I still think there's a chance that Wilson could be a productive starter at Utah. I'm just not saying that's out of the realm of possibilities.
Absolutely, and I 100% agree with you. But I think that that's gonna be something down the road, right? The one of the positives that I see with bringing in Devin Dampier, obviously had a phenomenal season last season at New Mexico, but you also bring him in as a junior, right? So there's that potential of him having 2 years left, and that's 2 years that Isaac Wilson can grow, learn, and figure it out in 2 years before he has to again take on a starting role. Now, again, who knows what's going to happen down the line? Is that something Isaac Wilson is going to be interested in? Is that something Isaac Wilson wants? That's going to be something that you'll probably have to monitor as the season goes, right? If Isaac Wilson is told to redshirt, is that something Isaac Wilson's going to want to do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Again, at the end of the season, maybe the transfer portal comes calling for him again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very well might. And that's where it'll be interesting. Like, just by not playing any games, do you all of a sudden recoup your stock? Because clearly there was a time where, look, I'm not Isaac Wilson. I don't know why I entered the portal. Obviously wasn't pleased and must have not found a home that was right for him or better. So are you just going to enter the portal a year from now and that will change? I don't see that being the case. So I'm really intrigued by what ends up happening with Wilson too. And we'll talk about some of the other quarterbacks in this room, but yeah, Devin Dampier is clearly the guy that we'll look at as, hey, that's Utah's starting quarterback. After Devin Dampier, Nate Johnson has college experience. And then you get Zurbrugg as a guy who comes over from Oklahoma that you're excited about, an SEC transfer. Wyatt Becker is an intriguing option too, just as a true freshman coming on, although we saw that went with Wilson too. But Wilson, this is going to also just reveal a lot. I feel like when we get to see him in spring, what's his makeup? Like, how did this was the biggest adversity I got to believe he's ever faced in his football career. How is he going to respond to it? I'm incredibly excited to see that. And the guy who he did win a state championship his senior year. He lost in the state championship game a year before. Like, that guy's in there, the gritty warrior. And I want to see what it looks like now that it just didn't go to plan last year at Utah. I'm looking forward to seeing what we do see from Isaac this spring, Alex.
I am too, man. Again, because I think this is still a guy who has a lot of potential to be a really, really phenomenal gunslinger. We followed him closely in high school. JT, doing a lot of high school coverage here in the state of Utah, and so we know what he's capable of, and we know we see the ceiling. We see how good and how great he can be. Now the question is, how do you take what happened last season? Not necessarily forget about it, but definitely putting it into the rearview mirror, taking the lessons learned and growing into this season, whether that be, again, a redshirt year for Isaac Wilson, or if he's going to come in and be QB2 behind Dampier.
Mm-hmm. It feels like there are lots of opportunities for Wilson to learn, grow, and develop. That's why he decided to come back to Utah. But where will he end up on the depth chart? Only time will tell. Like I said, I feel QB 3 or 4 right now. Alex leaning in the same spot. So then, hey, what does the rest of the QB depth chart look like? I've talked a little bit about who I think is going to be the backup for this team, but also we finally get to see Devin Dampier. Utah's going to go as far as Devin Dampier takes them this year. I really believe that. So what are we going to get out of Dampier? We're going to tell you in spring ball in one moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more, experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. That's right. If you're looking to take your business to the next level, then you need Upwork today. Because what does Upwork provide? It gives you business flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. It allows you to find the right talent. If you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who delivered incredible results. It's also just that fast and easy hiring process. Posting a job is free and simple, and within a day, you get multiple qualified candidates to choose from. Cost-effective growth instead of hiring full-time. Upwork helps find affordable, top-tier freelancers to scale my business effectively. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com. Upwork.com to connect with the top talent and grow your business today. Upwork, if you want to up your business game, head over to Upwork today. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is also brought to you by our friends at Fabric by Gerber Life. Life moves fast, especially when you have a family. One day you're watching your kids take their first steps, and before you know it, they're off to college. That's why securing their future is so important. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it simple to get term life insurance that fits your family needs. Life insurance is something that Gerber Life provides, and they can help you get today. So make sure you guys head over to Fabric by Gerber Life. And when you head over today, you can apply for term life insurance online right from your couch. You can be covered in under 10 minutes. And in many cases, no health exam is required. They give you that peace of mind. I mean, for parents, you want to make sure your family is financially protected no matter what happens. Fabric gives you that peace of mind. You can get millions of dollars in coverage for less than $1 a day. So protecting your loved ones doesn't have to break the bank. It's also just that beyond life insurance. Fabric also offers free digital wills and access to investments accounts to help you plan for your child's future. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their families. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege, all caps, no spaces. That's meetfabric.com/lockedon. Says Locked On College. Once again, Locked On College, all caps, no spaces. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company, not available in certain states. Price is subject to underwriting and health questions as well, too. Make sure you guys head over and check out Fabric by Gerber Life today to get life insurance that fits you and your family. Alex, looking at the rest of the QB room, there's been a lot of names in there, and we'll discuss them, but Devin Dampier, finally getting a look at a guy who threw for over 2,500 yards, who rushed for over 1,000 yards, the only player in the country to do both last year. To get our first taste of what Jason Beck's offense is going to look like, to see, hey, is it going to continue to up the RPO usage, all the things of that nature? What exactly does the Devin Dampier offense that is crafted by Jason Beck look like? That's what I'm incredibly excited about spring ball. Easily one of the top things, because Dampier, I do think, is going to be making a number of fun plays in those open practices we get to watch.
100%. And I think the biggest questions obviously coming into this season are going to be the offense. What does the offense look like under Jason Beck? What does the offense look like with Dampier at the helm? We know, because of the 19 touchdowns on the ground, because of over 1,000 yards on the ground, we know the run game is going to be solid for Dampier. We know he's not going to be afraid to run it. And we know that he is as much of a scrambling quarterback as he is a person who's going to want to make big plays down the field. Now, the question is, how can he evolve his passing game? Yes, he threw for over 2,000 yards through the air last season. However, a 12-to-12 ratio isn't the best. 12 interceptions, 12 touchdowns. That's not the greatest interception, right? You don't want to be throwing as many touchdowns as he threw interceptions. So I think for me, that's the biggest thing I'm looking for. What's Devin Dampier's next step in the passing game, and how do you work on ball security more, right? This is a Utah team who does not like turnovers. Kyle Whittingham says it all the time. He does not like turnovers. And he knows that when you turn the ball over, you make it hard on yourself to win football games. And so ball security is going to be super important. How does Devin Dampier evolve now to his passing game to allow himself to keep better ball security? That's what I'm going to be looking forward to the most in spring football. Yeah,
he's going against some good Utah defensive backs. So are they going to make the plays? That's what we'll get to find out. And, even I think his best attribute, the legs, you don't get to see that as much in spring ball because the guys aren't allowed to hit the quarterback. So we'll be interesting to see how Dampier looks, as he's really going to try to hone in on those abilities as a pocket passer, or just a passer in general. Like you mentioned, interceptions last year too high, but I do have the confidence he's going to be able to shrink that number down. So what other QBs are going to be going there look at, and who's going to be the backup? I've said before, I think Nate Johnson will end up being this team's backup quarterback. Came to Utah. I think there's been talk about him playing a wide receiver, maybe even a little bit of running back. Sure. But this team needs a backup quarterback to me. And there was only one who has made, that's not fair to Isaac Wilson, but I'll say who I trust more. There's only one quarterback that I feel good based on the most recent use of them as a Utah QB, we feel. And I know it didn't go great with Nate Johnson. He ended up getting benched. But this team was better with Nate Johnson than they were with Isaac Wilson. Part of that offense, players around them, all the things of that. You could argue that for last year, sure. But also Nate Johnson's abilities, I think he can do a lot of very similar things to Devin Dampier. Dampier led the country in yards per carry last year. Nate Johnson, if given a full slate of starting games, his yards per carry as a quarterback would be incredible. I just don't remember how he was used in 22 as just an athlete guy that would get in a little bit and run the ball at quarterback, and he was just tremendous. So I really think that Nate Johnson, when we see if we see Dampier go down, because you always have to be ready in case the quarterback gets hurt, I think Nate Johnson will give this team the best chance to win based on his experience. This is a guy who this will be his fourth spring ball now that he's even going into. And it'll be his fourth year, spent a couple at Utah, one at Vanderbilt. I think he's battle tested and ready. So that's who I would turn to. And I do think he wins the job in the spring. How do you see this room?
I think one, obviously that is a huge question, right? Where does Nate Johnson fit with his return to Utah? Because, the initial reports that were coming out when it was announced that he was going to be returning to Utah, it was possibly not returning as a quarterback, right? They were going to look at other options in order to get Nate Johnson on the field. And I think if Nate Johnson doesn't take that QB2 spot, he has the potential to be kind of a Swiss Army knife in the offense, right? He can come back and run some sets at running back, run some sets at wide receiver, and just give you a little bit of it, kind of an athlete guy who can be out there and just make plays for you. I do think, like you mentioned, with the experience that he has leading a Utah offense, that kind of right now gives him the edge to be that QB2. I think Zurbrugg has a little bit more questions for me, right? He was a redshirt freshman last season, coming into now his sophomore season. How far along is his development, and how quickly can he learn to Jason Beck's offense in this new system and a new place like Utah?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you just mentioned a guy who I think a lot of people are intrigued by. Brandon Zurbrugg, is a guy, 6'3" quarterback, 197 pounds. He was from Ohio, good high school football state too. Redshirted at Oklahoma last year, but he was the number 15th recruit in the state of Ohio too. A guy who was the 18th ranked dual threat QB in his class by ESPN and Rivals too. As senior year, 2,322 yards, 26 touchdowns, also over 1,000 yards rushing too. Won All-State twice in track and won the region championship at 300 meter hurdles, finishing 5th at the state meet too. So this is a guy that has some track speed as well, we know about too. So is he likely to be Utah's backup? That's where we haven't seen him. So I just, once again, how can I feel like, oh yeah, this is a guy when we haven't seen him? Dual threat abilities make me be excited. If he is Utah's backup quarterback, could absolutely see it. The writing's on the wall there. But I just think there are questions about hey, if we haven't seen you yet, how can I go into spring ball saying you're going to be this guy? Could he be? Sure. I think Utah is definitely fired up about him, but I have to see it first to believe it. And I think the same thing applies to Wyatt Becker. Wyatt Becker is a guy, 3-star recruit. Moose Bingham's been on the show before, who does a great job breaking things down in the recruiting world, saying, hey, Becker, the 6'1" freshman QB from California, he enrolled early too. I mean, this is a guy who he had a ton of offers, and he ends up coming to Utah. He was sensational at Sierra Canyon, and I do think he's capable of big things. But after what we saw from a freshman QB a year ago, I still believe, barring the Trevor Lawrences of the world, it's best for quarterbacks to sit and take their time. So I do expect Becker to be a little lower on the totem pole, but I think in spring ball, he could make a number of plays, because there's a big difference between spring ball and the actual game, which is part of the reason I think we saw Isaac Wilson initially win the job. Is when he wasn't going to get hit, he was really good. And one of his biggest weaknesses was handling pressure, and he did not handle that well last year. So I think Zurbrugg is a guy I'm higher on entering this spring ball, Alex, compared to Becker.
I'm right there with you, right? When you look at Becker, and I mean, probably the same thing can be said about Jamari too, is these are two freshmen coming in, playing their first snaps, playing their first time, doing their first spring practice as a college athlete. This is their first time being at this level, having just played high school months ago. Mm-hmm. They, similarly to Isaac, like you mentioned, I think this is a good opportunity for them to come in and just kind of impress in spring ball, show off what they have, and say, hey, this is what I can do for you. But if the opportunity to not rush them into any games is there, I think Utah should take it, right? Similarly to what the conversation we had earlier with Isaac, if there's a chance for them to just kind of sit back and learn and really take in the college game before we have to throw them before they're forced into any real game action, I think Utah should absolutely take it, because you don't want to see the same thing happen that happened last season with Isaac Wilson, right? Unless it's a break glass in case of emergency type of situation where Dampier and everybody else is injured and can't go, then I guess you have no other choice, right? But if it doesn't come down to that, which as a Utah fan, I think most people hope it doesn't come down to that.
Yeah.
But let them learn, let them sit, and let them develop fully before any expectations are kind of placed onto them.
And they're quarterbacks, so there are going to be large expectations. Drop in the comments below what you guys are expecting out of the quarterbacks, what you think we'll see from them, especially guys like Dampier, Wilson, and really excited that we get a chance to the reporters get to see these guys live too. So we'll hear the reports and everything. And we'll keep talking about that on next week's Locked On Utes, or on Friday's show after the practices drop on Thursday. But we have a lot of questions. In fact, the entire show tomorrow, I'm going to be talking about my biggest questions heading into spring ball. Alex has a big question heading into spring ball. I'm going to ask him what that question is in one moment. Today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. When you talk about Monarch Money, you are talking about a safe and reliable option. Because have you ever just checked your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investment, spending, and in one place. And you can just stop to managing your money and start just building your wealth. There's great things I love about the app too. I mean, the surprising insight. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more, all in one convenient place too. I mean, instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. It's also the easy collaboration. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track and share your personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all caps, no spaces, at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege, all caps, no spaces, for half off your first year. You can head over and check out Monarch Money today.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
All right, Alex, as I said, on tomorrow's show, I'll be talking about my biggest questions for Utah heading into spring ball. But I want to know for you, what is the number one question you have about this team that you feel like they need to answer in the spring, especially?
I think right now, for me, the biggest question that needs to be answered is the wide receiver room. Mm-hmm. Last season, you had Dorian Singer, who, there's still questions on whether or not he's going to return. But I think Utah should start figuring out what's going to happen, right, without Dorian Singer. Mm-hmm. Otto Tia, I think, is coming in, and really liked what I saw from him at Utah State. I'd be curious to see what of that carries over and what he can bring to Utah coming now as a transfer into this Utah football program. I think there's some really young talent in that room that has a lot of potential and has a high ceiling, like a Williams, like a Zipperer. But I think for both of those guys, they're still really young. So what kind of step are we going to see them take this offseason with spring ball, with fall camp, and then heading into the actual season, right? Who's your top three receivers? Who's leading that receiver room? And honestly, I think you can maybe potentially kind of throw tight end in there. I think we know Landon King is going to step up now with that hole that's left in the tight end room. But is it going to be Landon King, right? Who else is going to step up in that tight end room? And so I think, we can sit here and we talk about Devin Dampier. We can talk about the potential in that Utah quarterback room, but it's going to make a difference if Utah, doesn't have anybody to throw the ball to. So who's going to step up as far as wide receiver goes this offseason?
It's massive. I think Otto T is going to be wide receiver one. Outside of that, Zacharias Williams, Darren Zipper, Justin Stevens, another guy I think could produce big things for Utah in the slot. Ryan Davis and Dampier had that connection, so I think he'll be good. There's a lot of excitement around Creed Whitmore, though, the Mississippi State transfer, so that's another name to watch. And we're the same. I think Landon King is going to do big things this year. But outside of that, Dallin Bentley was up and down last year. And hey, I mean, we didn't even get to see a ton of King. Like, this is a guy who just hasn't found his way on the field. I don't think all of that is his fault based on some things I've heard about, like certain standards that Utah holds players to that don't even have to do with on-field like the on the field of stuff always. It's more off the field, like, hey, are you meeting this mark and that? So, and I'm not even saying anything about Landon. It's just reasons like, hey, why isn't this really talented player out there? It's like Utah prefers this personnel, or they'll be like, oh, you need to hit this benchmark and you haven't. So hopefully Jason Beck can maximize and use Landon King to the way that he was meant to be. So Alex, I feel like though, if we had to bet, and I've said this before on a show, like I think Otto Tia will be this team's leading receiver in 25. Ryan Davis definitely could because of that connection. He had over 700 yards last year, was second on the Lobos, so Dampier's second favorite target. But I would feel Tia right now. Maybe Landon King surprises us. Who would you go for that spot?
Again, I really liked what I've seen from Otto Tia.
Yeah.
From what he did at his time at Utah State, even last year with Utah State in a room that at times there were some questions in that quarterback room when it came to Petrus, when it came to Barnes, but Otto Tia was still able to make some big plays. I think Otto Tia has the potential now, in this offense with what's hopefully going to be a reliable quarterback. He can really take a step up in his game. I love what I've seen from Tia, but I think that there's a lot of positions up for grabs right now in that wide receiver room. It feels like there's a lot of positions up for grabs right now in that wide receiver room. So I'm curious to see who emerges out of the wide receivers in spring football.
Me too. I'm looking forward to watching how it all plays out. Just like I always look forward to having you on, my friend. Please let everyone know all the things you have going on.
Too much going on, man, but we cover all things. We cover all things local. Soccer season has just started up. Obviously, we're getting into the madness of the March, and so anything local Utah sports related, you can find me at Napoles Alex, and you can also follow all our coverage at CAROUSEL Sports.
Awesome, Alex. Thanks again for stopping by, my man.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for the invite. Always a pleasure.
That's going to do it for today's Locked On Utes. On tomorrow's show, teased it earlier, biggest questions, because tomorrow is officially spring ball. It'll be back on Thursday. We can't wait to cover it and hope you will all join us then. That is going to do it for today's Locked On Utes. We hope to see you tomorrow.